All right, I'd like to start out by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rachak Kodash. Welcome to another lesson. I was doing some research on Nineveh for some reason that came into my mind this morning, and I was reading through the book of Nahum, and I was reading the second and the third chapter, and Nineveh, which was ruled by the Assyrians, was a great city and a great empire at one time. I'm not sure if I can pull up, let's see, Assyrian Empire. Let's go to images. All right, now this is kind of small. Let's see if they have a bigger one. All right, here we go. This is the Assyrian Empire, and this is what they ruled. This is what was in the power of their hands at the time. And pretty much if you control this part of the world here, you pretty much control everything, because this was what the scriptures call from this point on, somewhere in here, this is Babylon, or the Chaldees. You can't really see it too good, it's a little blurry, but from this point on, this thing that arches like this, the so-called scholars call it the Fertile Crescent, and this is the cradle of civilization. This is also the richest, greatest land, pretty much on the planet. This is what everybody covets. So Nineveh was a great empire at one time, and you had the different empires had their time to rule. Now we going over Daniel, the 7th chapter, which I'm going to hit, Lord's will, and we always speak about the Babylonians, conquering Assyria, which they did, but the Babylonians had help from other nations. There were other nations that were fighting side by side with Babylon against the Assyrian Empire, and you also had infightings among the Assyrians, and the reason for all of that was because the Most High was ready to bring, the Assyrians down at that time, and the main nation that conquered Nineveh, which was the capital city of the Assyrians, was the Medes. They're the ones that really conquered Nineveh, and they're the ones that helped the Babylonians pretty much get into power, so to speak, over the Assyrians. And this is why we read here in Daniel 7:3, it says, "And 4 beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings." Now you do have griffins of lions with eagle's wings. There's many of them that are out there, that have been either drawn, or sculpted out of walls, but let's see, the Assyrian Empire, they had their own type of griffin. It was a head of a man, it had wings, and it had the body of an animal, and this is what symbolized, because they were all into idolatry anyway. All them different nations were into idolatry. That's why they always had to have something to compare themselves by, So the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. This represented the Assyrio-Babylonian Empire, okay? Because the Assyrians were in power, and then the Babylonians, along with the Medes and other nations, which we're going to read this little article I have here, they actually came in and destroyed Nineveh and destroyed pretty much the Assyrian Empire, because it was time for them to go down. It says, "I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and they lifted up from the earth." And this represented the Babylonian Empire, because they're the ones that came in to power after the Assyrians. Although, as Apostle Elder Tar always brings out, the Babylonian rulers were actually really Assyrian. But that was the empire of Babylon was the one that was ruling at the time, because they took over the Assyrian Empire. Okay, now let's go back. It says, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And that represented Nebuchadnezzar, because he was among the Babylonian rulers. Nebuchadnezzar was the greatest king to rule. He was the most opulent, the most wise, and he was so wise and so opulent that he got beside himself, and the Most High had to turn him into a beast, literally, out there in the wilderness, bugged out. All right, so this represents the Assyrio-Babylonian Empire, and the Assyrians were in power, and the Babylonians came and took them down, but they had help from other nations. Now, I have this here, amazing Bible timeline with world history, Nineveh destroyed. It says Nineveh was the ancient capital of the Assyrian Empire, and the reason why I'm going into Nineveh, like I said, for some reason, came into my mind, the Spirit this morning, put it into my spirit to do some research on Nineveh. So that's what I did. And when you read the scriptures on Nineveh, sometimes it's speaking about the ancient empire of the Assyrians, and sometimes it's speaking about America. And some of the things that happened to the ancient Assyrian Empire and the city of Nineveh apply today to America or Babylon the Great, because they're committing the same acts that got the same acts that caused Nineveh to be destroyed. America is also doing the same thing today. It says Nineveh was the ancient city capital of the Assyrian Empire. It was destroyed around 612 BC, which is when this event appears on the Old Testament timeline. The city was used by Assyrian kings as their primary location to rule their territory around 631 BC. The Assyrians dominated many kingdoms that were located in the Middle Eastern region of the world. And why? Because it was their time to rule. See, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. They think that the Bible is a joke. The Bible is not a joke. The Bible is a history book. It is a book of prophecies. It is a book of judgments. There's many aspects to the Bible, and the Bible is real. But the problem is that through this plantation Christianity that's out there, and these how could I call atheists, and people that don't believe in the Bible because it doesn't pertain to them, they've tried to cast dirt upon the scriptures, to try to destroy the validity of it. But the validity of the Bible stands to this very day, thousands of years after it was written. All right, so let's go back here. It says they had defeated the people and then transported many of them to different lands within their borders, and that's what they did. This policy was used against Israel and Judah. As a matter of fact, the Most High, or God, used the Assyrians to punish the Israelites for their sins, and which is true. He allowed them to force the northern tribes into exile, which we always go into. Various Assyrian rulers continued this practice for many years, and the reason why the southern kingdom was brought to America was to suffer for punishment for the things that they committed, the iniquities they committed against the Most High. Same as the northern kingdom. They were the Lord used the ancient Assyrians to put hell on us, and brought us out of our land. That's how we ended up on this side of the world. All right, so let's go down. So you're starting to see the same parallels with Nineveh, ancient Nineveh, and America, which is Babylon the Great. It says, over time, the Most High wanted to remove the Assyrians from power because of their many sins. He decided to use the Babylonians to punish this task. He wanted the Babylonians to become powerful so that they could be used against the idolatrous Judeans. The Babylonians were a conquered people living under the dominion of the Assyrians, and because when you go back in history, you had the Babylonian rulers that were ruling all the way back from the time of Nimrod, and they ruled all the way through, and then they were overtaken for a period of time by the Assyrians, and then they came back up into power, after the Assyrians fell. It says, in about 625 BC, they rose to power and launched an assault against the Assyrian Empire. The Babylonians pushed toward Nineveh, which was the seat of the Assyrian power. While the Assyrians were preoccupied with the Babylonians, a tribal group known as the Medes assaulted Nineveh and destroyed the city. So it was the Medes that came up in there, and destroyed Nineveh. When we read about the destruction of Nineveh and how Jonah prophesied against Nineveh. Well, that's how it was destroyed. The Medes actually was the one that took it down and destroyed the city. But the Babylonians became the rulers, the top rulers. Why? Because they were the next in line to rule. And when you do more research, you find out that the Babylonians had many other allies, different nations as allies that helped fight against the Assyrians. It says there were quite a few prophets who prophesied against Nineveh. They included Jonah, who was upset with the Lord for saving these people from judgment, and Nahum, who denounced the cruel acts that the Assyrians did to his people when they held them captives. Now, what do you think the Most High is going to do to America, Babylon the Great, seeing that the Lord destroyed the Assyrians for putting hell on our people? What do you think he's going to do to them, to America today? The same exact thing, but it's going to be more of a vicious destruction because it's coming by way of thermonuclear destruction. So the book of Nahum explains in vivid detail why God had decided to destroy Nineveh. The prophet Nahum explained in great detail why the Lord decided to remove Nineveh as a power. And today the Most High is removing America as a power, and the Lord is using his modern day prophets, which are us, beginning with the elder apostles of Great Millstone and the rest of the brothers in a Great Millstone that are teaching this truth and sincerity out there, pushing the word, and any other Israelite group out there that's teaching the same exact thing that we're teaching, and the rest of those camps, they gotta step up, certain issues that they have and teach the whole gospel, So it says, when the Most High allowed the Assyrians to conquer Israel and harass Judah, they did so with great cruelty. And what do you think they did here in America? America did the same exact thing. Let me get Zechariah, the 1st chapter and the 15th verse. It says, and I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease, for I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. So they went overboard with it. So the Most High is going to deal with them on that. So they built up their city by shedding blood. Well, how was America built? Was not America built the same way, by the shedding of blood? Let's go from there to Habakkuk, chapter 2. I believe it's verse 9, if I'm not mistaken. Just want to go straight to the point. Right here, Habakkuk 2:12. Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood and establisheth a city by iniquity. When they came here to the Americas, the Edomites came to the Americas. How did they get the America? They destroyed the North American Indians and the Seminole Indians and the so-called Mexican Indians, who owned this land, by shedding their blood, and then afterwards they went throughout the rest of the so-called Americas and Canada and all that and destroyed and conquered the Israelites that were there, and then after that, going into the late 1500s into the 1600s, they started bringing the southern kingdom over here and was beating them, and enslaving them and destroying them, and lynching them. Right? So this is the same thing that was going on with the Assyrian Empire, and the Most High took them down. What makes you think that America is so special, Babylon the Great, that the Most High is not going to destroy them? It says they built up their city by shedding blood, enslaving people. Did not they enslave the so-called Negroes, the so-called Latinos, the so-called Native American Indians? Here it is, a people that own this land. They took and they put, in reservations, which they call reservations, which are nothing more than concentration camps. So these are all parallels with ancient Nineveh and America. This is why the Most High considers America to be like a spiritual Nineveh. Just like it tells you in the book of Revelation 11 that America is spiritually known as Egypt and is also spiritually known as Sodom. Egypt was where all of the Israelites were enslaved in the land of Egypt. We were all enslaved, and here in America we're all enslaved. In America we're all enslaved, all the tribes together. So enslaving people, performing cruel acts of torture, and by having a disregard for human life. And that's what these devils do. Do not they kill Jake on the streets? You know, the cops gun down a so-called Negro or Latino, you know, Native American Indians. But the main ones they focus on is so-called Negroes, the tribe of Judah, you know. But they don't really, but they're not just destroying the southern kingdom, they also destroying the northern kingdom. You know, they're shooting so-called Mexicans, so-called Puerto Ricans in the streets. You know, they're killing so-called North American Indians in the streets, these cops. You know, cruel acts. But the one that's being pushed the most is the so-called Negroes. You know, and they are the head tribe. It says they engage in sorcery and witchcraft. So does not America engage in sorcery and witchcraft? So these are all the things that caused ancient Assyria or Nineveh to fall. And this is why there's so many parallels with ancient Nineveh and America. And that's why the Lord calls America Nineveh. You know, there's certain prophecies that happened back then, and there's certain prophecies that apply to now. You know, it says, and the Assyrian people of Nineveh treated so many groups of conquered people with extreme contempt. Does not America treat the world with extreme contempt? The Most High also punished the Assyrians because of their pagan worship of false gods. Even though he used this kingdom to punish Israel for the sin of idolatry, he then decided to judge them for doing the very same thing. All right, so this is what the Most High is doing to destroy these devils. And before I read any more precepts, I just want to read the rest of this just to get done with this. One of the reasons why Jonah didn't think that the Most High should have spared the people of Nineveh is because of all their evil deeds. When the prophet of Jonah was sent to these people, many of them turned their heads towards God in repentance. However, a lot of Assyrian people didn't turn from their sins, nor were they sorry for the evil that they had committed. When Nineveh fell, the Assyrian power base went into decline, and even though the Medes are credited with destroying the city, it was the Babylonians who would rule over the land. Assyria never rose to power again after they were defeated by the Babylonians. Why? Even though the Medes took the capital city, which by right they should have been the next rulers, but the Spirit wanted the Babylonians to rule, pursuant to prophecy that we read here in Daniel 7 and 4. This is the reason why they're ruling, you know, and America commits all these same acts here in this country, you know. Nahum 3 and 1, woe to the bloody city, it is full of lies and robbery, the prey departeth not. And that's the same thing that goes on here in America, because the prey is who? We're the prey. You think these devils are letting the prey go? That's the same thing that happened in ancient Egypt. You know, the Lord told Moses to tell the Pharaoh to let my people go, and he didn't let him go. And these devils know who we are. They see the camps and all of the word going out all over the world. You think they're going to let us go? Hell no. So the prey departeth not. Salakia. It says, the noise of a whip and the noise of the rattling of the wheels and of the prancing horses and of the jumping chariots, the horseman lifteth up both the bright sword and the glittering spear. Because these military men, they're gonna go to war. You know, everything is ramping up right now for World War III. You know, I was watching a little bit of the video that Elder Ariala did out there in Dallas, the algorithm update, you know, on World War III. You know, and these rulers are coming against each other. And there was a point in here that I was gonna put on the comment board for him, because it kind of went along with the lesson that he had, but I kind of forgot what it was, because I was reading this earlier. But if it comes back, I'll send it to him so he can look into it. You know, I know he likes to get into things like that. Okay, it says, and there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses, and there is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. So there's going to be a lot of death, like Elder Apostle Torah keeps saying. When these armies, the American army goes over to the Middle East, they ain't coming back. Matter of fact, let me get that one precept. Joel 2 and 20. It says, but I will remove far off from you the northern army. Who is the northern army? America. And why did the Lord say he's going to remove them far off? Because then they're going to be going from they're going to be going from so-called America all the way over here to the Middle East in this area. See? So the Lord says he's going to remove the northern army far off, all the way over to this side of the world, to the to the eastern hemisphere. All right? It says, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate. And that land over there in the Middle East, you know, is all desert out here. You know, this is where the main conflict is going on. You know, Syria, you know, Iran, Iraq. All this area here is all desert. I'm sorry, it's down here further. All this area here is all desert. You know, so this is the land that's barren and desolate that the Most High is removing the northern army far away from their borders, all the way over here. It says, with his face toward the East Sea. Now, what is the East Sea? The East Sea is the what you call the Persian Gulf, because this is towards the east. You know, this body of water here. You know, the Euphrates River, which is all connected. That's the East Sea. You know, the Persian Gulf and the Euphrates River, which are bodies of water that are spoken of in prophecy for the end times. All right, it says, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And what is the utmost sea? You have here the utmost sea, which is the Red Sea, because they're fighting all in this area here. You know, so from here back to here, this is all that area where that World War III is going to really be taking place. That's going to be the hottest part of the war, which is going to be the war to end all wars. It says, and his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. And why is it ill savor going to come up and a stink? Because there's going to be a lot of dead military men and women out there, and their bodies are going to be rotten. And the birds are going to have their feast, because the Most High promised the birds a feast. You know, and this is that great feast that the Lord promised. You know, like, you know, when you ready to have a shindig or a block party or some kind of gathering, you know, you send out the invitations, you know, you tell people, you know, such and such a date, you know, it's going to be there, it's going to be live band or whatever the case is. Well, this is the Most High's feast that he promised the birds, you know, and they're going to go over there and they're going to eat the flesh of captains and of different military men and women. And be pecking out eyes and pecking out backs and, you know, all kind of shit, you know. All right, so now let's go from there back to this. Nahum 3 and 4, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcraft. And when you look up the word mistress, it represents a female master. And mistress of witchcraft, why? Because America has mastered the art of witchcraft from all these different empires. It says that selleth nations through her whoredoms, and that's what they've done. You know, they've sold nations. You know, you've had America that brought the so-called Negroes over to this side of the world. You know, and they were being sold into slavery. You know, they've sold the so-called Native American Indians into slavery over into Europe. The so-called other northern kingdom, you know, from the Caribbean islands and other parts, you know, in South and Central America, they've sold them as slaves over into Europe, you know. So that's what they do. It says, and families through her witchcrafts. And that's what they've done. They've separated families and sold families through her witchcraft. You know, and this all they give honor and homage to their God. You know, their God is Satan. And that's what they give homage to. You know, they call him Lucifer, but Lucifer is not the name of Satan. Lucifer is the name, it just means like an illuminated one. You know, a bright morning star. It represents the so-called Illuminati, the international bankers. It doesn't represent an actual demon Satan. You know? But who they worship is Satan. And they admit that openly. You know? And the closer we get to the end of this man's kingdom, the more evident or the more blatant it's going to become. You know, because they're gonna when they establish this new world order, they're gonna give homage to their God, which is Satan. You know? And that's why they do all those different seances and those different parties, you know, the orgies and all that, because that's all in regards to the sacrifice to their God, Satan. You know, and this is why, you know, we believe they killed Stanley Kubrick, you know, because of that movie he put out. you know, and they allowed the movie to go out there, but they cut certain parts out of it. And he was exposing a lot of the filth that's going on, you know, in Hollywood and around the world. All right. It says, behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts. I will discover thy skirts upon thy face. And this is why this information is coming out. And I will show the nations thy nakedness and the kingdoms thy shame. And this is what's happening, you know. So these things parallel between America and Nineveh, but it really falls on America more because this place is fully shameful. You know, like they were committing some of these acts back then, but this homosexual agenda, you know, and all this other stuff being pushed out there in the forefront. Them ancient Ninevites weren't doing that, even though you did have effeminate Assyrians. You know, they show you that in certain movies. You know, you had homosexuality going on back then, but not on a scale that is going on right now. And America is pushing that worldwide so much that it's in the Holy Land, you know. You got gay parades all up in the Holy Land, you know, Pink City and all of that, you know. So this place is the Lord is casting that filth upon them, you know, and showing the kingdoms her shame. And I will cast abominable filth upon thee and make thee vile and will set thee as a gazing stock. So the Most High is setting America up as a gazing stock. And let's go to this one precept here in Job. Job 20, and I'll start at 10. His children shall seek to please the poor, and his hands shall restore their goods. Because eventually, although the Lord is going to destroy America in thermonuclear destruction, Babylon the Great, these nations, their kings that are left around the world that are not destroyed in the destruction of America, they're going to go around the world and bring all the riches back to us. You know, it's going to be a great restoration. It says his bones, which are his descendants, are full of the sins of his youth. So what are the sins of his youth? Well, let's go back to the inception of America. How did the so-called white man get America? How did he get this side of the world, the so-called Americas, Canada, and all of that? He raped, robbed, murdered. He stole everything. And then what did he do? He gave credence and homage to his God. The white image of so-called Jesus Christ, you know, and they use this image along with the Bible, you know, to deceive the whole world. And this is how they got their great recompense. Should I say, this is how they got the whole world, pretty much, by using this image. Using deception, making everybody believe that he was the Most High, that he's the son of the Most High. And now they're going down. So it says his bones are full of the sin of his youth. All you got to do is check out the history of America. This is why they're trying to take slavery out of the history books, because it's a shameful a blot on them, which they're trying to get rid of. It says, which shall lie down with him in the dust, and eventually you're going down. You know, this is why the Lord says here in Isaiah 47:1, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Why? Because when you're sitting in the dust, you're in mourning. So start to mourn. You know, the same way that you had our people mourning for hundreds of years. Well, now is your time to mourn. Now is your time to sit in the dust. Now is your time to sit back in that low position where you belong. You know? It says, sit on the ground, there is no throne, because your kingdom is going to be taken away from you the same way that the Lord took the kingdom away from the Assyrians, you know, from their capital city, Nineveh, and all them other nations that ruled up until today. You're next in line to go down. It says, O daughter of the Chaldeans, and the Chaldeans were a wise people. You know, and you are wise to a certain degree, because the scriptures say that you are wiser than Daniel. Let's get that real quick. Ezekiel 28:3. It says, behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee. So you are wiser than Daniel. You know, you are a wise people. You know, and that's what the Chaldeans were all about, the ancient Chaldeans. You know, they had the wisdom on how to keep certain things afloat. They were sorcerers. They were magicians. You know, and that's what you have here in America. But everything that these devils do is in the background. It's hidden. There's a hidden agenda. They have the Council of 13. They have different witches and warlocks that officiate their business. They have their satanic holy days that they consider holy days. You know, they have their witch Sabbaths and all of that. You know, because they're steeped in witchcraft. The scriptures call her the mistress of witchcraft. They've mastered the art of witchcraft from all these other different nations and empires that ever ruled on the planet. Let me get this other precept to back that up. Okay. Since that ain't working, okay, that's why. Come on, man. Come on. Let's see. Okay, go back. All right, it says, and the Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done wisely, for the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. So they are wiser, you know, but they're so wise that they're stupid. All right. That's why it says, that's why it calls the daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. All right. So now let's jump down from there to, I'm going to start at 9th verse. It says, but these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children. This is why it says sit in the dust, sit in a low position, and also sit in a position of mourning. And widowhood, because you're going down and you're going to lose. You're not going to win. No matter what you do, you're not going to win. You're already lost. It says, they shall come upon thee in their perfection. Why? Because the Most High is making a perfect work. This is why he's causing all this ruckus to happen. This is why he's causing things to go on around the world. This is why he's causing these different rulers to fight against each other. And even if they're all on the same side, eventually what's going to happen is the Lord said he's going to put a thought, an evil thought in the minds of the Medes, which are the Russians, and eventually they're going to think an evil thought against you, and it's going to be over with. It's no coincidence that the main two superpowers going at each other's throat is America and Russia, Babylon the Great and the Medes, you know. So the Most High is doing a perfect work for the multitude of thy sorceries, because you are steeped in sorcery. You are steeped in witchcraft. When you go back and you look at all your foundation and everything that you have and how you got it, you know, and how it's established, it all goes back to witchcraft. It says, and look at the layout of Washington D.C. Look at the buildings and the way it's set up. You know, this is you use masonry, you know, and the Bible to push your witchcraft agenda. Because this New World Order is nothing but a witchcraft agenda. Because the Most High never intended for all peoples to come together as one. It says, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments, for thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, and you've trusted in your wickedness. You've done so much wickedness, and you haven't been judged for it yet, that you really believe that the Most High is on your side. But you've been fooled. You've been lied to. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee, and you have become a perverted nation. This nation has become perverted. I don't know if it's the word shawab, to return, turn back. Perverted, apostatize. Why have you become perverted? Because you said in your you said that America was established upon so-called Christian values. You said that America was supposed to be established upon the Bible and the laws of the Bible. But when you look at your policies and your laws, they go contrary against the scriptures. Just like the Talmud for them so-called Jews, which own America, you know, the so-called Jews, the Amalekites, the Edomites, you know, they're claiming to be the people of the Lord. But when you check out their book, the Talmudi, pretty much all it is nothing but a bunch of perverseness. You know? So it says, thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee, and thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. You think you're the Most High. You know? You think you're the Most High. But the Most High got a surprise for you. You know? And you claim to be a Christian nation, but you're full of shit. That's why you're on one hand, you have the so-called president swearing on the Bible, but on the other hand, you have an inauguration. So you're pretty much using the Bible as a book of power, but then you're pushing your witchcraft in there. Therefore shall evil come upon thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth, and mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. And there's not going to be anything you could do to stop it. Because you have a plan, you have an agenda. And in your agenda, you didn't account for the Most High. It says, stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. You know, you can stand up with all the soothsaying and all the enchantments. You could chant whatever you want. You can say, you know, you can do your seances and your you know, you can throw up your witchcraft, you know, your witchcraft prayers and all of that. It's not gonna work. The Most High created you. The Most High created evil. The Most High is the one that's swinging you, which is the axe. And the Most High also say, how is the hammer of the whole earth broken down? You know, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. See, so from your very inception, from the very inception of America, this place was corrupted. You know, if so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail, and you're not going to prevail. It says, thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels, and that's what's happening. You know, you see what's going on, and you continuously having these counsels and these witchcraft seances and going to these different warlocks and your different counselors among these witches, you know, and you're trying to figure out, you know, what's your next step, what's the next move. And the Lord got a lying spirit on those witches out there to tell you everything's gonna be all right. Your new world order is gonna be established. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. And you're being deceived the whole time. Remember, the Lord said the deceived and the deceiver are His. He put a lying spirit in the mouth of the prophets of Baal. It says, let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. So no matter who you have out there watching and casting them spells and everything, it's not going to work. You're going down. Behold, they shall be as stubble, the fire shall burn them, they shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm at, nor fire to sit before it. So you're not going to be able to deliver yourself. Because this devastation is coming from the power on high. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. So thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter, none shall save thee. And all these nations are starting to leave America. You know, and little by little they're leaving here and there because they're seeing that the tale that they were told about this great city, this great place, you know, where you can prosper, is going down because of the economy and the dollar that's supposed to have, which is still the world's reserve currency, is going down the drain. And they're seeing that it's a lot cheaper to have their business in their country, so they can get the majority of the profit. And they're getting out of here. So the Lord is putting it in His spirit for them to leave, you know, because you going down, you know. So these are parallels between ancient Nineveh and America, which is the modern day Nineveh. All right. And the scriptures, and Babylon is also another name. Babylon the Great is also another name for America. You have spiritually Egypt, spiritually Sodom, you know, and all these Basra, you know, Edom, and all these different empires that ruled in the past, you know, that have similar parallels between what America is doing and what they did to cause them to fall. So it's no different now. America is going down now. This is the modern day Nineveh. So with that, I hope you brothers have been edified. To the next time I say Shalom.